Thank you, Joel Felsenstein, for that fantastic intro, outro. I cannot wait to see you in a couple weeks. He is going to be in the United States speaking, and I cannot wait to give him some hugs. So he is the leader of Rockstar X and the founder. We're so excited to have him in the States. But let's talk about our sponsors for the evening. Guiding Brilliant Writers Publishing and the gifted bipolar writer. You know her as Nicole and Jai Galindo. Nick, she is fantastic. I have been a fan of hers for years, but I've really started to understand just how talented she is when I was in one of her anthologies. She did a trilogy of anthologies. I was in book 2. And just watching the incredible work that she does and how she shows up for other people is absolutely amazing. So check her out. Also, the Sustain Network, Tucker Bascon. You're going to hear more about him this Friday. A little sneak peek. This Friday with our Funky Friday post, we've got Tucker Bascom in the house. Dom and I talk to him more about the Sustain Network and what he's doing. We're using part of that and his methodologies that we'll talk about in the show with Artez Jackson, our first adult student. So excited about what Tez is doing. And I was texting him and talking to him today. So we'll give you some updates about that as well. Rio de Sol, Nicaragua. If you don't know, if you haven't been following, I am going in June to Nicaragua to help Peter Shaler and his team at Rio de Sol to build a transformation kitchen in Nicaragua to help all age people learn culinary skills, empower themselves, and educate themselves to move forward in a very impoverished neighborhood. So we're thrilled about that. You might have seen that in March, the last Saturday of March, we're actually having a fundraising event. It is fundraising event because we've got some incredible people like Chris Shimbra, who is the Wall Street Journal best-selling author of Gratitude and Pasta and Gratitude Through Hard Times. He is a founder. He's an incredible human being, and he's going to be doing a keynote speech for us there. So we're excited to have him. And last but certainly not least, local, right down the street, 5 minutes from my house, Chef Chuck Bavonas at Bavonas Simply Pasta. Thank you so much for being our sponsors for the event tonight and for our event in March. We're so thrilled to have all of you. Without any further ado, let me introduce you to these incredible ladies. Because when this starts, when I ask the first question and go, I'm really just gonna sit over here. I'm just gonna polish up this new award that I got, and I'm just gonna let them go do their thing. And I'm telling you, you are in for quite a treat tonight. Quarterly, I wrangle up these ladies. We started doing this a year ago, right? And then we said, 1 year, our anniversary. Does somebody have cake? Does anybody in the audience have cake? You should be sharing that right now. We like cake. I like cake. So anyway, you know what? I'm so thrilled to have them. Every quarter we do leading from the front. And these ladies are just absolutely fantastic. Without any further ado, Tiffany Castagno, CEPHR in the house. She is incredible, doing some amazing things. Not only has it been a strategic partner for us, but I'm really excited to see how she shines and the work that she's doing. She's got an event coming up you don't want to miss, so make sure you check that out. Kylie van Luyn in the house, Elevated Coaching and Consulting Global. She is in Australia right now. I don't even know what time it is. What time is it there, Kylie?
I'm joining you from the future, so it's 11:05 on Thursday morning.
Fantastic. That is, I feel like something magical just happened just in you saying that.
I'll tell you what it's like over
Yeah,
here.
yeah. And Kylie is not just a fantastic human being that is leading Elevated Coaching and Consulting Global, but she is our board vice president. So thank you so much for all the work that you do. All of these ladies are connected to hrforyou.org somehow. Whether they're an advisory board member, they're a partner, they're strategic alliance board member, they're just incredible humans. Without any ado, Desiree Goldey, DRG, marketing, talent, culture. She's a leader in DEI. She's a strategist. She's got so many different titles. She's doing so many different things. She's incredible. And she has the most incredible picture behind her head. Don't look now. Pay attention to what we're doing, but take a look at that at some point. It's fantastic. And last but certainly not least, Dr. Marie Ristow. She is the founder and CEO of Systematic Equity Edits. I was thrilled to be a tiny piece of her exploratory work at the very beginning. And man, I got to tell you, it was enlightening for me to go through the process. And it just shows you, where your biases lie and learning more about those blind spots that you don't know, that you don't even realize that you have. So incredible panel for today. And today's conversation is about some of the things that we're seeing in the workplace and in the world right now. What happens when we leave DEI in the rear view? What happens when we start dismantling all the hard work that has been done and all the work that needs to be done? So I'm going to start out with Kylie because it's on my screen, so I'm rotating this way. But I'm going to start out with Kylie and just say, you know what? How do you think we need, as people that care about DEI and understand what's happening around us and are concerned about what may happen, how do we keep the brave face and stand up and continue to do the work and not be dismayed by what we see and hear in the world today?
Oof, big question. It's been, I think, 6 weeks for me, maybe a bit longer. Feels like forever. Just observing, being back and forth from Australia to the States and just seeing every day the news cycle, right? For me, what I'm really genuinely, seriously concerned about is the mental health and well-being of Americans. So that non-stop news cycle, the bad news, the constant state of chaos, which we see every day, the ongoing stress about job security, human rights being breached or completely abolished. I'm really concerned about the escalating mental health conditions and just the conversations I'm having with Americans and American workers about their anxiety and depression and the shift in their mindset. That's what I'm really scared about. I think the challenge is really balancing the immediate noise, which is really hard. And I was reading a lot about this the other day, that might be deliberate noise and chaos that's being caused. That's what I truly believe. But I think the challenge really for all of us and the work that we do and others in this space and leaders that are still prioritising DEI and wanting psychologically safe workplaces, I think the challenge is really balancing the immediate noise with a clear vision for equitable, inclusive and sustainable business practices. And I really see it as my job to educate and build awareness about what DEI actually is, because it's being thrown around as just this terrible acronym and all these negative connotations attached to DEI. We're hearing things like, oh, it's woke and wokeness. And I think part of the work that I'm doing at the moment is really getting down to the nuts and bolts of it with leaders and organisations and explaining that, if they want to rebrand, a lot of them are saying, well, we're worried about legal ramifications. We're going to rebrand our DEI initiatives and our focus into just inclusive workplace cultures. And part of those conversations is explaining to them that you can't have one without the other. And so I think that it's really about those conversations, building the awareness, building the education, and making people aware about what diversity, equity, and inclusion truly means, and also what the risks are to them and their businesses. Because I think that that's something that's not being thought about at the moment. We all know, but I think that that's those negative repercussions for individuals, for workers, and for industries and organisations. That's the thing that's not being spoken about at the moment.
I was so struck by a post that Desiree put out about DEI recently that I don't spend as much time on social as I used to, but I not only commented, but I was like, I have to share this, and I think it goes a lot to what you just said. So Desiree, if you wouldn't mind not only answering that question, but talking about your post where you were really diving into, hey, this is what DEI is. And I think some of you are a little confused. So it was brilliant. So if you could do both, I would really appreciate it.
Yeah, I mean, the constant confusion of what DEI is and has always been. By the way, I just want to say that we've been doing this work for a long time, and it will continue in some form forever, right? I've been doing this work before 2020 when it got popular. I know all of you have as well, and it will continue in some form or fashion. And I do agree with Kylie that this is just noise. To me, and it's noise that it's made to create confusion, and it's made to make you have these horrible, angry emotions and get flustered by them and not continue to do the work, right? So in that mindset, right, I wrote the post out of anger a little bit. I had to rewrite it, by the way. But I do think I have to say to people, it's not a training. It's not a PowerPoint slide. It's not a workshop. It's how we treat human beings in the workplace and provide safe spaces for people and promote and make equitable situations for people. It is not putting an unqualified person in the seat. I love when people say there's a DEI hire. What are you talking about? Like, I don't even know what you're talking about. It means you don't understand what the word means or the acronym means. And so I struggled to write that post because I could have gone on forever. I only have 3,000 characters. So I had to like write it, rewrite it, scale it down because I wanted to yell at people over and over that they don't understand DEI. And if they understood it, they wouldn't be so against what it actually is. Because I wrote in the post, I think in that post, it is a veteran who gets, government assistance. It is a white woman trying to get equitable pay. It's not just putting a Black person in the seat or a Hispanic person. That's what they think it is, right? That's not what it is. There's so many things. There was a great post about the current president and Elon being DEI hires, right? He's over 70, right? I mean, like that's a DEI hire. Like, I mean, I honestly do not think people think about what they're saying before they say it. But I also think the media is a horrible thing. And if you get really sucked into American media right now, it is scary and it's frightening and it makes you want to pull your hair. I actually had to stop for a couple of days because I was losing my mind. For people like Anne who have to live in the education system, you can't get out. but I don't have to live in it consistently. So I'm able to step away from it. But I just want people to stop, think, do a little reading, right? Think about what DEI actually is and think about how it may influence your life. Even if you're not from what you think is an underrepresented group, you probably fall somewhere in that DEI mix in some way, in some fashion, in some form. And if you don't, if you're a white male cisgender guy, right? Maybe you don't, but it does affect something that's happening in your world. Part of that post was also about the economy and people's jobs and all the things that are going to be affected by doing this one thing. It's a trickle down effect that is going to disrupt everyone, whether or not you believe in DEI or not. And that was kind of the post and kind of where I was going with it.
I love that. And yeah, I think you could have, if you had more characters, you could have kept going, and I would have kept reading, because it absolutely is where we are in the state of things. And it seems like, okay, because of all of this that's going on, like Kylie aforementioned, like everything that's going on in the media and everything that's happening with the current political, scenario, we are being flooded with, we're going to take these things and we're going to do away with this, and there's this is closed down, and we're eliminating these jobs. And I don't think people understand that there is a tremendous impact when we walk away from things that have been built by people over the span of decades, and we say, oh, well, we don't need that. We don't need that anymore. I don't think you understand it to understand how much you need it. And that's everyone, not just who you think it's for. So it was a brilliant, brilliant post. And again, I want to circle back around, and Tiffany, come on up and give your thoughts, not only on anything you heard for the post, but the original question. Where are we at?
And I don't know what's going on with my video, so I'm sorry if I seem like I'm captioned or something, but or in subtitles. It's a lot, right? It is a lot, and I think, first, we can't forget what has been done, and I think that that's a very difficult thing at times for us when I forget the term, but it's like velocity. It's the speed at which everything is coming at us, which is very deliberate, so that we don't have time to respond, or at least they're thinking that. But it doesn't mean we can't have a strategy. I, like Kylie, I'm very concerned for the mental health of our world, because what we've seen is that loneliness is at an all-time high. There were all different sorts of things going on before this, pre-pandemic. Pandemic, we saw a rise even more in the mental health crisis. There's a struggle to find providers. And these are all things, if you had the right access to begin with, right? If you weren't already disadvantaged. And what we're seeing is that folks aren't understanding who stands to be impacted. And to Desiree's point, understanding what it truly means and how folks, we might call somebody a diversity hire, but we're not understanding the job market is already tough. We see a lot of people who are already, it's inundated with folks who are looking for opportunities. And now we're further saturating that. Now we're impacting people even more. And it's like, this is the agenda that we have. What about the humans who are at the center of this? I get this because I'm in Madison, Wisconsin. I get a publication called In Business every day across my desk. And so looking at that, and it's just heartbreaking watching, daycare centers and other childcare services. Not only does it impact that business, but now it's impacting families. How is someone supposed to work and earn a living wage, right? That's important to HR4U Inc. And we all have to earn a living wage. How are you supposed to do that when you don't have a childcare center to take care of your family needs? It's just one thing after another. And I think to say that we need to be vigilant or resilient is one thing, but what does that actually mean in practice? And for me, it's been community like you all, and having the right conversations, checking in on each other, and knowing that we've been here before. To Desiree's, we probably always will be, unfortunately. I hope I'm wrong. I want someone to tell me I'm wrong. But right now is tough. And I think it means when we can and when we allow ourselves to rest enough, when we can lean on our other community when we need rest, is to just double down, and continue doing the work that we've always done to put humans at the center. It's really the heart of it. And I wish that we could get that message through, versus people seeing, skin color or someone's gender or ability and things of that nature.
Yeah, we see it's almost like we're taking steps backwards. And that, I think that is the hardest thing for me. Not only seeing the growth that I've had in my own journey, and realizing my own biases and where I was blindsided, over the last, really 2019 and beyond, coming to this awareness of, oh, I don't know as much as I thought I knew, kind of thing, to now seeing even the things that I've learned, people are going backwards from that. It's troublesome, and it's hard to put on the brave face and do the things. And I don't listen to normal news. I get a thing called AP Wire. So I just hit highlights of everything that's going on around the entire world. And I can click on those highlights if I want to dive in deeper. But it's pretty much just the facts, Jack, kind of thing. As unbiased as they can possibly be, but we're still humans. So I get that, but man, even sometimes I'll read just the bullets and I'll be like, I can't, not today. I just can't do that today. I don't have the bandwidth for it. And, we were talking before the show, you were mentioning, because you're doing some teaching as well, obviously this is impacting so many different areas. Talk about your perspectives now, and especially with the question at hand and what you're seeing.
Yeah, I think it's like where to land in this head of mine right now, because there's so much going on for all of us. I go back to the definition, like breaking down instead of using the terminology of DEI and speaking about diversity and equity and inclusion, as the focus of bringing variety to the workplace, of ensuring that there's opportunity for everyone, making sure that we can access our workplace in order to contribute. Just basic human rights are being brought into the conversations, where we've been making so much progress in those areas in building awareness, but also action. And it feels like we are going backwards, but backwards is still movement. I have to remind myself, backwards is still movement, and in it is an opportunity, because we have the opportunity to stop and say, hold on a minute. We're talking about healthcare, taking away people's rights to healthcare, taking away people's rights to education, which are foundational for our country. And, it's so interesting to me when I look at all the pieces of these puzzles. We had a conversation about 6 months ago, I think it was, when the affirmative action ruling came in, right? And at that time, I actually wrote down part of the quote from Sonia Sotomayor, who she said, it's about race neutrality and connecting the decision of her peers to persisting racial inequalities, and how it's like taking us back as a nation. And I look at where we are as a nation, at globally, the placement of technologies and what's available to us, the innovations, has, in no disrespect, but for lack of better terms, dumbed down society. And so when we look at the NAEP scores, the average American now reads at a 7th, 8th grade level. And so they are entrusting the media that you were just talking about, the social platforms that we all engage in. And the loudest voices are getting their attention, right? So, and that trust factor is there. We grew up as a nation in America trusting our government and believing that they were really focusing on our betterment. But now we're maneuvering our government in a way that we've never been put in a position for before. So you take all of those pieces together, and it reminds me of work that was done years ago now in education, where we went from speaking about having a learning gap or a disconnect for learners and realizing it was an opportunity gap. And it was not that people are not capable. And that's what I hope people can take away from our conversation tonight is we are more than capable, and we are intelligent and evolving as human beings. And I do believe that when you break down the acronym and think solely about what each term means, like Desiree said, it's how can you not build that velocity that Tiffany mentioned? You know, how can you not be re-energized by something that could be just, you know, the intention is to just flatten you and slow you down. And it's like, no, this is the time for us to continue to become stronger in awareness building and in action, and really look at our systems as a nation and say, wow, okay, let's have a conversation, not about DEI. Let's have a conversation about how you're going to ensure that you have a variety of people at the table making decisions so that you are more marketable, or whatever your end purpose is as your business. I just think that there's a lot to unpack and a lot for us to continue to do, and that though it's in a negative connotation right now happening, we can flip that. We can take control of that and say, yeah, no, like this is what we are as a nation, and this is where we came from, and this is just an opportunity for us to affirm the importance of every individual and every person's needs.
I love that. And I think it's very hard not to get wrapped up in all the negativity. And each one of you have said it in your own way. I think it's really difficult. I know it is for me, not to get wrapped up in all the things and have a mindset that's already negative and drilled to being predisposed to this is all terrible. Mm-hmm. So I want to focus really some time here on some good plans that we can share with other people. There's a lot of people that will see this, especially after the fact. We always have a tremendous crowd that comes and sees these. I was looking last time at our thing, it was almost 2,000 people after the fact, just on YouTube alone, that came back and watched. And normally on our videos for our podcasts and other things, they're watching segments of 5 minutes or less. For our segment, which was over an hour, people were watching 30 minutes at a clip. I mean, and I was blown away. That lets me know that this is valuable conversations that people are appreciating. So I want to give out to the leaders that are present and the people that will see this, that you guys give any kind of tips, tricks, things to focus on that you haven't said already or that you want to re-emphasize. And we're going to start, I'm going to go backwards this time. I'm going to start with Desiree, but what do you think the best thing for leaders right now is for them to do in an organization, and how can we, whether you're a leader or not, help focus that attention in a positive way as well?
Yeah, well, I talk about this stuff all the time. So, as leaders, I think we have the duty and the responsibility to provide safe spaces for the people that work for us or work with us or anything like that. So first of all, creating a safe space for people is number one. How you do that in each organization is a little bit different, but I think that being a leader that people can come to is huge. I always talk about empathy and authenticity as a strategy, and I mean that, right? I mean that should be your strategy for leading a team. You should be going in with empathy and authenticity as a leader. And right now, that empathy is going to go a long way because you just don't know how each team member is feeling. So increasing those one-on-ones, increasing that time that you're spending with each individual on your team it's going to be huge. Not everybody's going to say everything in a group. Not everybody's going to feel comfortable doing that. And they still may not even be comfortable with you, but at least you're giving them that option to bend an ear for them. And sometimes, and I really encourage people, I was just talking about this earlier today, to listen and not talk so much about how that person should feel, right? Just listen, take it in, and then support them in any way that you can. It may not be all the things that they need, but it may be one simple thing. Like, I need to work from home on Friday because of this. It's my mental health is just out of control, right? Maybe you can give that to them. If we could just stop and breathe and listen to people a little bit, I think we'd be a much better place. I also encourage people to use their voice. I was having a conversation with a person that I'm coaching, and she's like, I just don't know what to do in my organization. I feel there'll be retaliation if I speak up. And I hate that for people. I hate that they work in organizations where they feel like that, but it's still necessary to use your voice when you can. If you see something that's going wrong and you feel like you're not in the right place or you're not in the right moment and something is happening that you feel makes people around you unsafe, I need you to use your voice. And as leaders, we better be using our voice. If you're an IC, I get it. But as a leader in an organization, if you're not using your voice, I don't want you to be a leader. I want you to find another job because it frustrates me to no end that you have been given the position of authority to lead a group of people and choose not to use your voice to stand up against what is wrong in an organization. Now, you may not be able to say that DEI is the thing or make an influence, but you can voice your opinion. My biggest thing, and this goes way back to the beginning of the conversation with Kylie, is the safe space thing. I can't say enough, if people feel unsafe, that their mental health then struggles to the point of no return, and they will not be productive for you. You will not get anything out of them, and it leads to really, really harsh, total breakdowns of a person. And if you can be that one support system for them in a moment, I can't tell you what that does for people, even if it's just one moment of time. I actually, when this got started, and I'll shut up in a second, but when this all started, I was on a call and out of the blue just started crying. I felt overwhelmed in the beginning of this, that this was the situation that we were in. I'm married to a woman. I told her we're going to end up at a camp somewhere. I was really struggling to wrap my head around the whole thing. And the person that I was with, just let me cry and was like, I need you to be okay. What can I do? It didn't solve the problem, but at that moment in time, that's all I needed to hear. I didn't need her to solve the problem. I just needed her to say that for me. And it was a work colleague. It was totally unprofessional at that moment, but I didn't have a choice for it to happen, and it happened. So creating those spaces for people is going to be essential right now.
And I'm going to go back to you and same question. You mentioned a couple of things before, but I want to give you an opportunity to anything that people can work on, people can do, that will create that positivity and move in the right direction. And I love, Desiree, that you said it, and I saw comments from Michael, and thank you all for joining us this evening. Thank you, Kenny and Michael, Jody. And there's a couple of LinkedIn users I cannot see. Sharon Byrne, thank you for being in the house. Appreciate you. But I loved not only that we're continuing to talk about psychological safety, because we already were in trouble before all this started. Like we literally we were just coming to grips with the fact that, okay, we got some things we got to deal with. And I don't know whether it's been coming and this started in the pandemic. I don't know, but now it's all a wave, and we're seeing these incredible numbers of how people are just devastated and how they're feeling. And then there's this dumpster fire happening in the market space where there's more jobs than there are actually people to fill them, yet we can't seem to hire anybody, and we can't keep people. And it's like, what is actually happening? Because it's almost even worse than when it was in the pandemic, when everybody was just mass laid off. So I digress. I said I wasn't going to talk as much, and I am like, I got all on a tangent. Let's go to Dr. Marie Ristow.
No, actually, I am right there with you. So going back to the opportunity gap that I mentioned, one of the things that they included in their study was the weight of wasted time. And I was reading some of the messages as I was listening to these amazing people speak. And one thing that Michael said was, be seen, heard, and valued. Like, that's what people want, right? And I think that it's important. It's important for each of us to continue to be seen, heard, and add value, and to support others in doing so as well, because that's going to make a huge difference. I think also Sharon mentioned something about those in charge are taking us backwards. But what's amazing is we don't have to go backwards. For one thing, we don't have to join the movement backwards. We can continue to move forward. It might be slower steps. It might be heavier steps, but we can continue the movement in doing what we know is right for people. But we also have this thing in education called backwards design. And, you work backwards from where you're at. And where we're at is an opportunity, if you will, to really solidify the importance of our human rights in this nation and how everybody who lives and breathes has those rights. And so flipping the conversation from going into a fight, flight, or freeze mode and moving into that resiliency and forging forward. I was just having a conversation with some colleagues this week about that, because the difference is if we can build our strength, and it is going to take a lot of mental health work. You're right, Kylie, for sure. But building our strength or standing on what we have so that we can see the positivity and find that nugget, that little golden nugget or that little piece of glitter, and just explode it, so that people can be seen and heard and then understood as well. And then another thing that I saw come through the box, that is a great quote from Stephen Covey that I absolutely agree with, is seek first to understand and then be understood. And so it's not going to help to come in and just start calling people names and, behaving in the way that some of our government members are currently behaving, where we're bullying and trying to overexert our power. But understand, well, where is this coming from? And that is always an area to be able to then recognize how you can flip what you're doing with your employees, what you're doing with students, what you're doing with the people in your community, and just really recognize that it is about coming together. It doesn't have to break us apart.
Thank you for sharing that. And yeah, we've had some great comments, and I'm glad that I can count on you to not only bring some data, but also to like highlight some of that. So I appreciate it. It's fantastic. Tiffany, I want to go to you next. And, you mentioned some things before, but what do you have to give to leaders today, and certainly people that not only are you consulting, but in the webinars and workshops that you're doing and things that you have going, how can we be better at taking all that's going on now and let some positivity flow through it? And what things do you think, we should be focusing in on?
Yeah, I appreciate that question. And it's, we're at a space, well, we always should have been, where it should be, as leaders and, organizations, like, you don't bring people in just to churn and burn them. Hopefully, unfortunately, that's what happens sometimes, right? So approaching things with an open heart and an open mind, understanding that we talked about active listening here, right? And it is such an underestimated, it's hard. Don't get me wrong. You will be exhausted if you're doing it right. But it is a skill. And Desiree talked about, when we talk about open doors and open hearts, allowing folks to just be themselves. And we see so many people put up on their websites and, tout this like, well, we have an open door policy. We allow people to be their full authentic selves at work. Well, is it only in certain circumstances? And what do we do when we meet that moment where someone like Desiree is coming through that door? Do you have enough of an open door and an open heart to allow that and meet her where she is, to support her? And I find sometimes that people say that, and then, then they come in my office and they're frustrated because so-and-so is doing this and it's unprofessional, or they're not getting their work done. Well, if I was going through the situation they are, a lot of times we forget to lead with curious questions as well and understand what is going on with the person first. I think that we're just in such a state where our leaders themselves are burned out and not understanding, so it's like results over the person, but we have to create these workplaces of harmony. One of the things I'm super excited about our upcoming conference and event is looking at how people matter. And so we're going to be talking about the U.S. Surgeon General's pillars and framework around mental health and well-being, and how does that connect to the workplace? How do we connect to each other, and how do organizations help people matter at work? How do we protect people from harm at work? There's a certain safety that we as humans deserve, and somehow that doesn't always translate into the workplace. But we all have basic human rights that we've talked about here today. We all expect to not be harmed from our workplaces. And probably all of us here have had a story where we have been. So, it really just encourage leaders to, one, don't feel like you have to have it all figured out, and you can show some of that vulnerability too. We are seeing that people, your teams are expecting you to have more of this, lack of a better word right now, but a softer side, right? Not this hard exterior that only comes to check on me when there's a project due, or checking my light on Slack, or, maybe throw me a pizza party. That's great. But what else? What happens when my family's going through a really hard time? Will you create a policy to help support me and the rest of my colleagues if one doesn't exist? And will that be a fair and equitable one? So it's just, I'm seeing such, I don't know how many times my phone has rang over the last week with the heaviness that people are experiencing in teams and organizations, in, how they connect to their leadership. That's a big one. And so if you expect to engage and retain your team, you might want to look at doing some things differently, because I'm telling you, my phone is ringing off the hook and people need that support, and it should come from inside the organization. But I'm glad that I can be that for people as well.
Yeah. That open door policy is kind of like this conversation that we had about culture. It shouldn't be that, that pizza Friday, that, that's when it's okay for you to bring your full self to work on that one Friday. But I digress. Oh my goodness. One of my favorite conversations that we had, and talking about, we don't need foosball tables, but we do need people to leaders to show up and actually care. Oh, Kylie van Luyn, take us out as we're getting ready to finish up. Take us out. Give us some wisdom from the other side of the pond.
No pressure. No pressure. I think there's a real the trust seems to be completely broken right at the moment, and I'm so sorry, I can't remember which of you wonderful ladies said before. I think maybe it was Anne, actually. Once upon a time, we trusted our government that they would act in our best interests. Well, from the conversations I'm having at the moment, there seems to be this very significant, swift erosion of trust. And I think and I was talking about this to somebody the other day about vicarious trauma, and what we're seeing at the moment is people have this 24 hours news cycle. They're explaining the state of the country and the political environment, perhaps to their children that have got lots of questions. My daughter's obviously not a US citizen, but she's following what's going on very, very closely at 17, and she's got a lot of questions and a lot of opinions. And so people are having these conversations and thinking about this constantly over and over. Then those people, we don't separate ourselves from, the home version of ourselves to the work professional version of ourselves. We're one human being, right? And so whatever we're going through and experiencing, and trauma and vicarious trauma and other things that we're either experiencing in the workplace or in our personal lives, that is going between those two places, right? So we're carrying this baggage, psychological, mental health baggage, from home to work and work to home. And with that erosion of trust in the government and people in power, and the things that every day are happening to essentially dismantle and erode, people's human rights, like we've been talking about, people are going through what I'm seeing as a grief cycle, essentially. And we're talking about this before we jumped on. Some people are experiencing anger at the moment. Some are going from sadness to anger. Some completely disillusioned. And I think that leaders really need to focus on nurturing the mental health and well-being of their teams by having conversations, like really authentic, respectful conversations in the workplace about what is everybody experiencing. It's tricky, I know, at the moment, because people are coming from different places to have these conversations. But I think as leaders, what we need to do to be able to not only retain our staff, but to, if we're good, effective leaders and we've got the best interests for our staff, is to really understand what our people need, understand what their trauma is, and what some of that looks like for each individual that we lead. And we can't do that without having honest, authentic, vulnerable conversations where we listen. And I think it was Michael in the chat before said, listen more, talk less, seek to understand, not to respond. And I think that's a critical thing. And it is such a simple concept. It always has been such a simple concept that so many leaders just get wrong. And a point that I'm constantly making at the moment with leaders in organisations in the States and here in Australia, as well, as we gear up for our election, and there's bound to be quite significant change here also, is that be really mindful and careful not to be too reactive to what's going on, because if you strip away all of your DEI initiatives and focus and programs, and when your workplace then becomes less inclusive and less psychologically safe and less respectful of people from all backgrounds, then you might just well be replacing one form of legal risk with another. So I think that for me, it's always been for me about talking to leaders about, you literally have nothing without your people. They're the ones that do the work and make us as leaders look good. Okay, so we have to look after them, especially now. They're going through a lot of trauma. And also for leaders, I would say, be really reflective and take time out to think about your own well-being and where you're sitting with things at the moment, because you're probably also experiencing some level of vicarious trauma. And what we don't want to do as leaders is project that onto our staff.
Oh my goodness. People, if you haven't felt it, then you might want to just start from the very beginning and just watch it over again, because it's been as tremendous of a conversation as I knew it would be. Every quarter, I have the privilege and the honor to get together with these ladies to talk about things that are really important in our world and our communities. And we we jump in at all feet first and just dive into the conversation, and you get a chance behind the curtain to see what is being talked about and what is being discussed in the work, because that is daily living, breathing work. That's what DEI is. It's daily living, breathing work. And these ladies are doing it. I'm honored and privileged to be part of their conversation. I'm so honored and privileged to know all of them, to be friended with all of them. I can't thank you enough, ladies, for being here this evening, taking time out of your day. And Kylie from across the universe to join us. But I am so thrilled to have all of you here. Thank you for the work that you're doing. Thank you for continuing to do it. I can't tell you how many people DM me and say, Jason, are you okay? Because I know the kind of work that you're doing. I will tell you right now, if you're listening, and I don't care who hears this, we will continue at HR for you to stand in the gap, to be the people that need to stand in that gap and do the work that we do. We will not be deterred from doing that. I was talking to our first adult student today, Tez Jackson, and encouraging him and talking to him about his studies. I am not going to stop doing this as long as I'm on this planet. And at 60, I can tell you that I'm doing everything I can to be healthy, to stay healthy, and to live another 20 plus years so that I can continue this work. We are committed to living wages, to DEI practices, and we're even working with Kylie and other organizations. We're going to start doing even more in the psychological safety space and encouraging leaders, because we feel like it's in tandem. When you care about the psychological safety of your employees, you're also going to care about their living wages, because you're going to care about them as human beings. So it's all tied in together. So we're going to double down on everything that we're doing. So I appreciate all the DMs and the emails and the comments, but I will tell you that we will absolutely continue to do this work. And we're going to dive in to do more boots on the ground things. We've been advocates since 2022, but now we're actually going to be doing more programs where we show you, here's what it looks like. And that's what Transformation Kitchen and our other programs that you're seeing launching, if you follow us. But I thank you, ladies, for being part of this conversation, for doing the work that you do on a daily basis, and for standing strong when things are tough. You are all my heroes. You're my heroes. I love you to death, and I appreciate you. We have been talking to Kylie van Luyn, Tiffany Castagno, Desiree Goldey, and Marie Ristow. This is Leading from the Front, and we will catch you next quarter with another amazing conversation with these four ladies. Thank you very much for being here. Thank you for all the work you're doing, and continue to do that. Thank you for everybody who showed up today. We will catch you next time. Take care.